Welcome to an allotment where the tools have lives of their own. At first glance, this might look like a typical allotment. Vegetables growing, dandelions going to seed, a snail nibbling on a lettuce leaf. The only hint that something is not quite normal is a wooden dibber with a lot of facial hair and a comb over to be proud of. Hairy Dibber knows that most of the people or creatures we come across in life are basically good-natured. Plenty are very kind-hearted indeed. But sometimes we encounter people whose behaviour falls short of the mark and can be described as bullying. You know the type of behaviour I mean. You might even have experienced it yourself, but hopefully not been the one dishing it out. Today, the tools are about to have their own encounter with bullies, and the bullies are about to learn an important lesson of what happens when you behave like that in the tools' life zone. For those who've not visited this allotment before, let me introduce Imbu. Imbu is a very kind and helpful little creature who lives on the allotment. He's made from odds and ends that the allotment holder, old Jack Nooney, couldn't throw away because he thought they might come in useful one day. In fact, Imbu's name is made from the first letters of the words I might be useful. Today, Imbu is helping his friend Notty do some weeding. She's the little ball of string next to him. There's a lot of work to do, as old Mr. Nooney hasn't been able to come to the allotment since he fell and broke his leg some months ago. The friends hadn't been weeding for long when they hear a kerfuffle from the cabbage bed. It's a sort of kerfuffle that can't be ignored. You know the type of kerfuffle I mean. You might have even heard one yourself. So they head off to investigate. They find Grumpy Dibber and String-along examining cabbage leaves. Something has been feasting on them. "Take a look at these leaves," says Grumpy in disgust. "They look like they've been through a shredder. Anyone would think we're growing pre-shredded cabbage." "Perhaps there might be a market for that," says String-along. "Handy for making coleslaw." "Oh dear," says Imbu, climbing up to take a closer look. "Can you see what's doing this?" asks Grumpy. It doesn't take Imbu long to spot the culprit. He sighs. "Notty, I think you'd better come up here." Notty climbs up to join Imbu and sees the culprit too. It's the snug. For those not familiar with this creature, allow me to explain. A snug is a unique little creature which is half snail and half slug. But this means it's not welcome among the snails or the slugs, as neither group see him as one of them. Think of him like a mutated football supporter that half supports Liverpool and half supports Everton. As such, he is seen as an abomination not tolerated by either club, destined always to walk alone. "Oh, Snuggums, have you shredded all these leaves?" asks Notty. "All right, sorry like, I didn't realise how much I'd eaten. I thought I was only having a nibble, but I was so hungry, me belly thought me throat had been cut." "A bit of a graphic image for this time in the morning, but I take your point," says Notty. "Well, you knew to do something about him, Notty," shouts Grumpy. "He's your responsibility. You were the one who said he could come and live here." Indeed she had, but that's a story for another day. "Come along, Snuggums. Remember that I've been growing some lettuces especially for you. They should keep you out of trouble." "Oh, it's all coming back to me now, like. Right grateful," says the snug. "I'll head over there, have a recce, like." After sorting out the cabbage kerfuffle, Imbu and Notty returned to their weeding. It was somewhat disheartening to see how overgrown the bed had become since old Mr. Nooney had been at home with his broken leg. The pair worked hard, but suddenly Imbu cries out in pain, "Ow!" He rolls on the ground, and the end of his stick turns bright red and starts throbbing. "I've been stung." Notty can see he has touched a stinging nettle and rushes off to get a dock leaf. "Here you go, wrap this around your hand." Oh, says Imbu, this isn't much fun. I'm starting to hate weeding. Couldn't we ask the snug to eat the weeds? That would solve the problem of everything getting overgrown, and also solve the problem of the snug eating all the other vegetables. Notty sighs. I'd already thought of that, but Snoggum said, oh, how did he put it? The weeds go right through him like a dose of salts and give him the galloping trots. Whatever they are, I didn't like to probe. You know how graphic he can get on the subject of his digestive troubles. Suddenly, there is a voice behind them. Hey, forgive me for interrupting, but I couldn't help overhearing that you have some problems with weeds and snugs. I think I can help you with that. Notty and Imbu are surprised to see a stranger on the allotment, and a rather sinister-looking stranger at that. Allow me to introduce myself. My name's Prongs, and I works for an organisation called Zolat Z. We specialises in finding solutions to life's little problems, like yours. Well, I wouldn't exactly say we have problems, says Notty guardedly. I begs to differ, and I know my boss would begs to differ too. Not that he would ever beg, not his style. Prongs looks around. Take these weeds, for example. This is your patch. You expends a lot of effort to clear it. You risks getting stung in painful places. And does these weeds respect the situation? No, they does not. In a few weeks, they're all back again. It's like they deliberately want to disrespect you. Does that sound right to yous, guys? Imbu grudgingly mumbles that it didn't sound quite right. We can take care of it all for you. Keep your patch clear. Same with your snug problem. You spends all your time growing vegetables, caring for them, only to see them all eaten before you can ever pick them. I ask you again, does that sound right to yous? Imbu and Notty say nothing and start to feel very uncomfortable. Prongs continues. Let me give you my business card. For a small regular payment, we can deal with all your problems using our special chemical-based solutions. Keep life simple for you. Hey, we all want a simple life, am I right? Possibly, replies Imbu nervously. Let's take a little walk. Meet this snug character. Imbu and Notty didn't move. I said, let's take a little walk. Reluctantly, Imbu leads them across the allotment and finds Grumpy Dibber, Stringalong, and the Snug still by the cabbage bed. So, this is your other problem area. Prongs points to one of the shredded cabbage leaves. Does this leaf look right to yous? Everyone, including the Snug, is forced to admit that it doesn't look right to them. Well, you got my business card. Like I say, my boss is all about solutions. So he'll be waiting to hear from you so he can sign yous up for our services. You got 2 hours, 3 tops. Our address is on the back of the card. And with that, Prongs strides away. Imbu and Notty sigh with relief. Oh, he was a scary tool. Let's not stay here in case he comes back. They hurry off to the shelter of the cloches, and Imbu shows Grumpy Dibber the business card. Well, this is an understated little number, says Grumpy, studying the card. You name it, we kill it. They've certainly gone for the does what it says on the tin style of advertising. I'll give 'em that. I don't much like the sound of this killing malarkey, says the Snug. I can't help feeling that they've got it in for whoever shredded that leaf. He thinks for a second and then exclaims, "All right, you and me, like. I'm going to leg it, lay low for a while, like." And with that, the Snug slithers off. Oh, what a pickle! However are we going to resolve this? Asks Notty. Imbu steps forward. Perhaps we should have a nice little chat with Prong's boss. He might be a reasonable chap. We could explain nicely that we don't want his company's services, but we'll be happy to pass on the details if we come across anyone who does want any killing done. Grumpy looks a bit sceptical. Oh, I don't get the feeling they're going to take no for an answer. Oh, but we have to try. The back of the card says, "Find us at Unit Z behind the shed." That's a catchy address. They're very good at their marketing slogans, aren't they? The three of them head off. I have an awful knot in my tummy, says Notty when they reach the address. They are met at the door by Prongs. Well, good to see yous again so soon. I knew yous was a sensible bunch of clientele. Hey, boss, you got visitors. Shows them in. Prongs leads the way. Allows me to introduce you to my boss, Mr. Big Pot. Mr. Big Pot is sitting at the back of the office, surrounded by samples of their products. Yours must be the new clients. Pleased to meet you. Are these all the things you sell? Asked Imbu, looking at the bottles and reading their alarming-sounding labels. Oh, they don't leave much to the imagination, do they? Says Notty. We likes to keep things simple, replies Mr. Big Pot. Keeping it real. What's the point of hiding behind fancy names? Herbicides, pesticides, insecticides. Maintenance, adds Prongs. No, Prongs, maintenance is something you order in a restaurant, and these you definitely don't want to order in a restaurant. Not if you want to survive a meal, that is. Ho, ho, ho. Now that's funny. What? You don't think that's funny? Yes, very funny, says Imbu. So, you're here to sign up. We can offer you a great deal. A total service for only a regular small payment. Oh, no, you misunderstand, says Imbu. We've not come to sign up. We've just come to have a nice little chat with you. Now this is funny. See, I'm normally the one who likes having the nice little chats with people. Glad to hear we're on the same page then, says Imbu, sounding relieved. Grumpy mutters under his breath, On the same page? I don't think we're even on the same book. But Imbu continues. We can see you're very passionate about your products, but we aren't into killing things. Mr. Nooney, the plot holder, always uses organic methods. We'd rather work with nature than against it. And this Mr. Nooney, is he around now? See, a little bird told me he'd had an unfortunate accident. Yes, replies Imbu sadly. He had a fall and broke his leg. That's a pity. Isn't that a real pity, Prongs? It sure is, boss. Mr. Big Pot continues. I heard Mr. Nooney was at home going to his greenhouse and tripped over a pot. Great pity that. It's amazing how easily people can trip over things. And it can happen more than once. Be a shame if he was to trip over a pot again, just as his leg had healed. Imbu, Notty, and Grumpy gulp and look at each other in horror. Now, about this weekly payment of yours. You know what a big pot like me wants? I wants a regular supply of good quality compost. We're talking top-grade stuff, you understand. None of this peat-based rubbish. I see you's got compost bins round here, so that should be a problem for yous. And in return, we get rid of your weeds, your pests, your snugs. A mutually beneficial arrangement. And we takes our first payment in 2 days' time. Mr. Big Pot gets out of his chair. This is a new era. It's like I always say. Make the allotment, well, you tells them what I always say, Prongs. Make the allotment great again? Suggests his henchman. No, I don't say that, Prongs. What do I care about making the allotment great? Do I look like a philanthropist to you? No, boss. What I say is, make the allotment my empire. Mr. Big Pot leans over Imbu in a menacing way. And make no mistake, this is my empire now. Oh, and to make sure you understand this fact, we've arranged for a little demonstration of our products. Prongs, shows our new clients out. Once outside, Imbu, Notty and Grumpy are feeling very shaky, and Notty starts to cry. What are we going to do? Suddenly they hear a groaning coming from the lettuce bed, and they hurry towards the sound. To their horror, they see the Snug laying on its side, with String-along giving it gentle strokes. Oh, Snuggums, are you feeling unwell? Asks a worried Notty. Oh, not good, like. I think it must be something I've eaten. I feel like some gnomark has kicked me in the slime sack. Oh, no, I think it's been poisoned. This must be Mr. Big Pot's little demonstration. Just then, Professor Cracked-Pot Dibber, the allotment science Dibber, comes over to find out what all the groaning's about. Professor, thank goodness you are here. The Snug has been poisoned. Is there anything you can do for him? You're the nearest thing we have to a doctor on this allotment. The Professor gives it some thought. He does look proper crook, but I reckon I can help him. I have a few, well, how do I put it, experimental medications in my lab. I've been waiting ages to try them out at something. They're not going to turn him into a robot Dibber, are they? Asks Imbu nervously, remembering the result of the Professor's recent experiments. Struth, nothing that fancy. That could never happen. Well, I guess never say never. Come on, Snug, I'll take you back to my lab. What doesn't kill you makes you stronger, eh? You up to signing a waiver? Imbu knows he must get the payment for Mr. Big Pot, or there'll be more trouble. He goes to see Neverfull, the compost bin. Would you be able to give us some top-quality compost? We need it very urgently. Oh, I'm devastated to say that I can't help you, Imbu, says Neverfull. My compost is nowhere near ready yet. Take a look. Imbu and String-along climb up and peer inside. Oh no, whatever are we going to do now that we can't even make out payment? Says Imbu glumly. Nobody sleeps well that night, worried about what's to become of the little Snug, and indeed the whole allotment plot. The next morning, the wise old ruler finds Imbu by the water tank. You're up early, Imbu. What's this you're washing? Imbu shuffles awkwardly and mumbles something. It looks a bit like a white flag, says the wise old ruler. Planning on doing a bit of surrendering, are you? Well, come to mention it, says Imbu, rinsing the material. I see. And is it necessary to launder your white flag first? Imbu looks glum. Well, if you're going to do a job, you should at least do it to the best of your ability, and that's what I've always thought. The wise old ruler gives him his sympathetic pat. You know, I've heard all about that Mr. Big Pot and his henchmen. Surely you aren't surrendering to those bullies. But what can I do? I'm too scared to do anything else, says Imbu. I understand. It must feel very scary if you think you have to tackle them on your own. You must feel pretty helpless. I do. I don't want any trouble. I just wish things could go back to how they used to be, says Imbu sadly. They won't unless you take some action, Imbu. You know that bullies set out to make people feel alone and isolated. They don't like light shone upon their behaviour, and certainly don't like the pressure that comes to bear when creatures band together against them. In this case, there are only 2 of them, and so many more of you. Imbu thinks about this while he finishes his washing. Suddenly his eyes light up. You know, you're right. We all need to get together to stand up to them. I'm going to call a meeting. And Imbu does just that. Soon everyone is volunteering to help because no one wants the allotment plot to be taken over by thugs. Naughty takes charge of the plans for the resistance and starts by teaching everyone how to make placards. Placards are the cornerstone of a well-organised demonstration, she says. Demonstrating and campaigning has always been in my string. Did you know that my great-great-grandmother, Emmeline String Ball, was used by suffragettes when they were practising how to chain themselves to railings, says Naughty with pride. Now make sure you don't use all the red currant ink. String along, we've still got plenty of placards to make. The next day they are due to make their first payment at high noon. Mr. Bigpot sits in his office, confidently waiting for his supply of top-grade compost. Suddenly, he hears a distant chanting that gets louder and louder.
Save our snug! Save our snug! What do we want? We want you gone. When do we want it? Now. What do we want? We want you gone. When do we want it? Now.
Prongs, go and see what that record's all about. But before Prongs can reply, Imbu leads a parade of all the creatures into the warehouse. Everyone has turned up to help Imbu and Naughty. There's String Along, Grumpy Dibber, Flash Dibber, Big Dibber, Reese the Fleece, Canaan Label, Professor Crackpot Dibber with a few of his robot dibbers, and even Hairy Dibber carrying a placard declaring his love of comb-overs. Slightly off message, but at least he's turned up. Imbu bravely stands his ground. We're here to tell you that this allotment plot is not your empire. It's Mr. Nooney's, and we look after and protect it, and we won't let you kill all the weeds, all the insects, all the butterflies, and especially our snug. What are you going to do about it? Asked Mr. Bigpot, looking very surprised at the turn of events. The creatures start to knock over the products. String Along tackles the weed killer. Hairy Dibber takes down the flying things killer. Flash Dibber and Big Dibber knock over the snug killer, and the professor orders the robot dibbers to exterminate the crawling things killer. Mr. Bigpot has never met such unified resistance before. You can't come into my office and start messing with my stock. Don't you know who I am? Yes, we do, shouts Naughty. You're just a bully who needs to be put in his place, and your place is not here. Now get out of here and don't come back, cries Imbu, and don't even think about threatening Mr. Nooney, or we'll get the allotment committee onto you, and believe me, you don't want to mess with them. Mr. Bigpot and Prongs are visibly shaken. This ain't over, calls out Mr. Bigpot, but this just sounds like an empty threat from an empty pot, as the two rush out of the warehouse as fast as they can. There is much cheering and celebrating as they leave, and best of all, the little Snug slithers in. He's been cured by the professor. Naughty throws her arms around him. Oh, Snuggums, how do you feel? I feel all right now, but before I felt like me insides had been dragged out through me shell with a crochet hook, put through a blender and then forced back into me body through me blowholes. Oh my, the effects of the poison sound terrible. Oh no, that weren't the poison that was the professor's cure. You signed the waiver, sport, the professor calls out. Well, the most important thing is you're safe now, and no one will ever poison or need to cure you again. Their celebrations go on late into the evening, and the wise old ruler joins them. I want to congratulate you on the way you've all worked together to face these bullies. The trick is being united and not thinking you're on your own. The more strands of twine entwined together, the stronger the string, says Naughty in delight. "Quite so, Naughty, quite so. And I've made sure the allotment committee has been told about the stash of undesirable chemicals found on the allotment, so they'll dispose of them safely." And what about Mr. Nooney? Will he be safe?" asks Imbu. "A little bird tells me that the chair of the committee will be going to see him tomorrow and will clear up any clutter, and particularly loose pots, from his garden." Everyone cheers. So the next time you are faced with bullying, whether in person or in a virtual world, remember you don't have to face things alone. Tell other people what's happening. After all, there is strength in numbers. Just think about Notty's words. The more strands of twine entwined together, the stronger the string. And if you're looking for some strong string, look no further than the Tools Life Zone. The end.